In America, the majority of minimum wage jobs are not done by college students. They're not done by students. They're done by people in their like 30s and 40s.
アジアの考えとしてはさ、もうステイボーになることがまあ目標なんだよ。
Welcome back to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And then Yumi.
And the topic of the day is Gen Z and work. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, Gen Z and work. You've made it through elementary school, middle school, high school. You fought and put a lot of effort to get into a good college. You struggled through 4 years only to come out. You finally get your dream job only to realize that you don't know why you've been working this whole time. This is a feeling that I think many people have had, or people who decided they didn't want to go to college in the first place. And yeah, today we're talking about Gen Z work as well as some other related, other brackets of people working, like old people as well. The thing that spurred on this conversation or this topic today was many things. So France currently has a revolution. It's not Gen Z. It's kind of basically their retirement age was bumped up from 62 to 64, and they currently have a riot. You hadn't heard anything about this, right?
聞いたことない。
Yeah. And then simultaneously, there was other news that came up that was talking about Gen Z in America, specifically saying that was like 90% of Gen Z won't even bother applying if a job doesn't list the salary requirement. And there was another thing on the other side of this in Japan, where I've been constantly being spammed with ads about tenshoku, which is changing jobs. And so all these things together have made me want to talk about this topic. But do you have any thoughts before we go into some statistics?
Gen Z のなんだ働きたい会社の特徴。
Well, I mean, your general impressions. Do you feel this not wanting to work from this is kind of a meme that Gen Z don't want to work, but it's more complicated than that. And like I said, I'm technically Gen Z. Technically, I'm Gen Z. IME is definitely.
前まで Gen Z じゃないとか言ってたくせに。
Well, no, well, it depends on whose definition. I'm technically the first Gen Z or not Gen Z.
あ、そうなのね。
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, maybe we'll come over. So first thing we'll do is a general overview of some statistics, because a lot of the statistics that and ways people talk about Gen Z is just data that covers in America that people apply cross-culturally. But there definitely are parallels between both countries. Do you want to start with some of the Japan information?
On what?
The working for, right? You have tenshoku with different generations. I believe we have some.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So ちょっと待ってくださいね。
Yeah, here we go.
はい。まあ転職率っていうのがまあなんて言えばいいんだ英語で。
Job transfer, I guess, or job change.
No, rate ね。
Oh, the rate, yeah, rate of job changing.
で、まあちょっとこの統計がまあ最近から取ってるやつなんだけど、2016年でどれぐらい転職してるかっていうまあ統計があって、2016年はまあ 3.68% の人が転職していると。はい。で、まあ20代、30代とかがまあ多いのかな。一番多くて。で、まあそこからまあちょっとずつ転職率が増えていったんだけど、2019年、まあちょうどコロナが始まったぐらいかな。
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, 2019.
そう、2019年に6.96%、まあだいたい 7% ぐらいになって、まあ2倍ぐらい転職率が増えたと。で、2020年にまあちょっと下がって 5% ぐらいになって、また2021年でまた上がってまた 7% ぐらいになったと。だから結構コロナで転職したい人は増えてるのかな。
Yeah. I mean, personally, I also know, I believe I talked about this one time, but a professor of mine or assistant professor of mine, Japanese professor, went even through grad school, went through undergrad, went abroad for training as well for education, went through grad school. After going through grad school, switched to just doing coding. Just literally just like went to a coding boot camp or coding boot camp, I guess less coding boot camp, more of in Japan, it's very common to have jobs that train you. So it's kind of like a mix between a boot camp and a just vocational coding academy or something. Yeah, but it literally went all the way through grad school and changed. And I think this would put her into the 2020 or something, or 2019. Oh yeah, also something I want to mention when we're talking about this topic, because if we have older listeners, there is this impression that between people who have boomer parents, boomer parents, people from the boomer generation, they're like older, probably in the, I don't know, now, is it 60s now? 60s, 50s through 60s, maybe 70s. Okay. I'd have to check the full generation. But there's been this notion that for a lot of people who have boomer parents, where when they were kids, they were able to get a job and have one job and support an entire family and maybe start a business with their own money or whatever, do all this stuff with their money, et cetera, et cetera. But something that is a very fun statistic surrounding this whole topic in general is between, this is according to CNBC, or I guess they're reporting on statistics. But yeah, I'm looking at a CNBC article. This is between 1979 and 2020. Workers' wages grew by 17.5%. So 17.5%, their wages grew, while productivity grew over 3 times as fast at 61.8%. So productivity is defined by how much revenue or money is generated by any given worker. So despite having a 61% productivity raise, only 17% their wages went up. And so there's a lot of other statistics that go around that focus on this in general, or the fact that like it's almost impossible to like for a lot of people, especially my age range, to buy a house or even rent a house. And so now houses are being bought up by giant corporations, and then they're basically just loaning them out to other people. This is a big problem in the UK as well. Yeah, I don't know if housing is a problem in Japan. I don't know if you know anything about that. I doubt it. I mean, some areas maybe housing in Tokyo because people want to live there. But generally speaking, I think I didn't watch the video, but it was like an Economics Explained or some video like that said Japan is giving away 80 million homes for free or something. I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah. Well, there's probably more context. I'm assuming it wasn't a lie.
でもさ、これをさ、生産性が 60% で上がったのに、給料が 17% しか上がってないってことは、大きい会社がより大きくなって、
Yeah.
ね。
Yeah, that's a thing. So, we're definitely going to get into capitalism will be discussed in this episode most likely, but the goal of a company is to maximize their profits, basically, or shareholder, just profits. If you increase revenue or increase profits specifically, then shareholders end up getting more money. And so the way that businesses tend to do that is by trying to maximize how much their workers will work for while minimizing the wages that they'll work for them. And I think you had some interesting statistics with Japan. So even though Japan is like, I think still the third highest GDP in the world, the workers have a salary that is like on average, less than half of the US?
まあ、なんていうの?
Their average.
まあ、給料って言ってもさ、ちゃんとした定職っていうのは、定まった職って書いて。
Salary, yeah.
違うよ。
What? Isn't 定職?
定まった、職ジョブで、なんていうの、フルタイムってこと。フルタイムのジョブか、アルバイトによっても給料が違うんだけど、で、まあ、アルバイトだと、per hour で、時給が、まあ、1100円ぐらいが平均って言われてるけど、まあ、地方に行くほど安いし、東京とか、まあ、大阪とか、
yeah.
東海の方だと、まあ、1000円超えるのかな。そう。でもこれは、日本って結構賃金が安いので有名らしくて、アメリカだと2倍とかもらえるのかな。
It depends on where you're living. And there's also the whole separate conversation about minimum wage. Technically speaking, the minimum wage legally across like national, the lowest you can make it is $7.25 an hour.
7.25?
Yeah, $7.25. But most places, because of
ティップとかもらえるでしょ
no,
レストランとかだと
that's a whole separate conversation.
あ、そうなんだ。
That's lower. That's a whole conversation. But I guess just to get back on topic with Gen Z specifically, because we'll keep expanding more probably to talk about the economy and other stuff later. I think we should talk about some of the I guess the characteristics of what makes kind of Gen Z unique, especially in Japan and the America. They're related, a little different. I mean, I have it up here. I'm not sure if you want to talk about Japan because we were just talking about them with one of their or some of their characteristics. For Gen Z, yeah, for Japan. Or we're both looking at the same article? Yeah, do you want to go ahead and talk about some of the Gen Z characteristics about what they're
どうやっ
looking
て
for in a
働
job?
きたいか。
Yeah.
まあ、Gen Z がどうやって働きたいかっていうのが、まあ、ここのアーティクルに書いてあって、なんだ。ワークライフインテグレーション。めっちゃカタカナだけど。ワークライフインテグレーションっていう、まあ、ワードがあって、仕事が充実してれば家庭も、充実するっていう考え方らしい。だから、まあ、より良い仕事をすれば自分の家族も幸せだよねってことでそういう仕事を探したいっていうのがGen Zの考え方。あとはそうね、本業だから、まあ、フルタイムで働いて、それとまあサイド副業として何か自分の、好きなことをやりたい。例えばまあ本業は会社員だけど音楽が好きだからなんだろう、ギタリストとしてちょっと稼ぎたいな、そういうのもやりたい、ね、そういうの副業って言うんだけど、サイドジョブか。
Side job.
そうだね。あとはギグエコノミー。ギグってなんだろう。
So gigs are like paid like jobs that you don't have to commit paid like full-time work or salaried work, but you just do one-off jobs. Like Uber is an example of a gig job. A lot of those in Japan it's not that popular, but in the US gig jobs are becoming more and more popular. There's something called BetterHelp, which is also like mental health, but I think that's also a gig job, not salaried.
副業との違いは、受動的である。仕事が来たらやる感じか。
Yeah.
そういうのがやりたいのね。まあネットを通じて単発の仕事をしたい。まあUberとかだね。Uberってさ、なんだ、仕事近くの依頼が来たら自分で荷物運ぶとかね、そういう感じだよね。
Yeah.
そうそう。あとフレックス、まあフレキシビリティのことかな。
Yeah.
でまあ自分で始めたい時間決めたり、まあ終わりたい時間を決めたりって、まあなんかこれ見てるとさ、結構セルフケアしたい感じじゃない？なんか、
Yeah.
自分が働けるように働きたいっていうのがGen Zの働くなんていうの、まあ願望って感じかな。
Yeah. Well, something I find interesting is although there are differences, like I said, it's more common to change. And one thing we're talking about is Gen Z, people from Gen Z in Japan and America as well, they love comparatively to previous generations changing jobs. And Japan traditionally has not had a really big like job changing as well, aside from some like large change ups, like there was a financial crash like in 2008 which also affected Japan and some stuff. There was some job shifting, but generally speaking, you going into a work, if you like leave there within 5 years, that's a really bad sign and it's really hard to get other work.
まあなんか、なんかそれの理由がなんかさっきっていうかまあ見たんだけど、結構日本の会社って長ければ長いほどなんていうの、プロモーションなんていうんだっけ、昇格されるの。例えば部長から課長になるとか。
Yeah.
だからその同じ会社に長年いるとボーナスがもらえたりね、いいことがあるからなかなかチェンジジョブをしない。
年功序列。
年功序列って言って、まあ経験が長い人ほど偉くて、年がね年取ってるほど偉い。
And that was another explanation that we read about why salaries tend to be lower is because I think we've discussed this one time before, but the longer, instead of having like the position of your job or the industry you're in specifically dictate pay, which it does dictate pay, but a large chunk of pay is just dictated strictly by how many years you've been at a company. Like with no other relation. Just have you been there for a long time, you get paid more.
だから、なんだ、若者とかね、頑張ってもどうせさ、年取ったじいさんたちの方が偉いからさ、あんまり頑張ろうっていう意欲もなんだ低くなってくると。
Yeah.
ね、
But yeah.
そう。
So just on the American side, because I find a lot of the things that you're talking about, you see the same trends over here, but Gen Z, irrespective of how different Japan and America are. With Gen Z, so this is according to the Forge, 2022, November 2nd, so pretty recent. In terms of basically Gen Z, they are very like happy to do job hopping. And it was said like there was an increase of 130% or something job hopping over the pandemic or like 2019 with more than before. This is 65% of Gen Zers feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. 58% of Gen Z report that they have unmet social needs or such as income, employment, education, housing, and food. And they also like working from home or remotely, as well at higher rates than other generations.
これさ、ジェンジーの働き方さ、働きたい、なんていうの、理想像みたいなさ、をさ、中年だったり年取ってる人が聞くとさ、何言ってんだこやつらはって思わないのかな。なんかそんな仕事はうまくいかないよみたいな思いそうじゃない。
Well, here's where this is kind of why, and where I consider myself, because I said before I don't consider myself very Gen Z. I definitely feel Gen Z at the beginning, where I was saying at the very beginning how I started the episode was talking about like, you put all this effort into high school, or I was talking about my personal experiences where you go through education because you feel like you have to go through education. Then you go to college, at least my perspective, because you feel like you have to go to college. But to me, it wasn't necessarily like I even related to a job specifically. It's just I had to go to college because I had to go to college. And then you leave, especially in America, and you're debt trapped. And then even if the thing that you were in is something like can generate a lot of money, I just, at least personally speaking, like it's just like the whole system is set up for like any job. And this is something that I never understood with, I kind of understand the roots of why in Japan jobs are seen as like you're part of your family unit. But I find it so ridiculous because Japan after World War II basically became capitalist nation 2.0 with kind of cultural values that used to work in Japan. But they kind of, a lot of Japan ascribed these family closer units or like family businesses and applied those same values to like super capitalistic corporations in Japan. For example, what I mean by this is people treat like we talked about this before as well, where I've seen interviews where older Japanese people have been asked the question, "Oh, do you work to live or live to work?" And they're like, "Of course I live to work because my job is everything." But from the company's perspective, you are literally just you are there to generate profit, and the company's also there to take as much of your labor like from you as possible while giving you the least amount for it. And so I've always thought it's so weird that generation after generation, like our previous generations have said, no, you have to be loyal to your job. You gotta pick yourself up by your bootstraps and work. Like it's been very almost like brainwashed, not almost brainwashed, just straight up brainwashed. They're like, these things, for example, I was talking with IME earlier, and I guess there's a pretty good episode to talk about it. The whole notion of part-time work to me is insane. Obviously, I'm used to it, and there's a whole notion of you got to be a paper boy when you're a kid, and you got to know the value of work. That's something that you hear a lot. I'm not sure if there's an expression in Japanese people say that. Like, it's basically saying this idea that you have to work for the sake of working. Like when you're young, when you're a kid, like you need to do salaried or some sort, not salaried, some part-time work. You need to work at a restaurant. You need something to know the value of $1. There's this notion, the value of $1.
まあだからこれだけ働いてこれぐらいの給料がもらえるっていうのを知るべきだってことでしょ?
No. It's not about the kyuryo. It's actually almost the point of it is that you're getting low paid. The point is you gotta have work, because if you don't get work, then something happens, because for some reason there's this notion that the notion of work, which obviously has the receiving money, like there's this notion that you can't put effort into something, and it won't be qualified work unless you're being paid through some sort of business structure. You know what I'm saying? There are plenty of ways that you can do effort into something that you're not directly getting paid that pays off longer in the future. But in America, there's this idea basically like, oh, no, you have to set yourself up to get slave labor for your entire life. Because something that I mentioned, and this is why I think it's really crazy for part-time work. and I wish I actually looked up statistics for this because I've looked it before, where in America, the majority of like minimum wage jobs or the lowest jobs available, whether or not they're the legal minimum wage or whatever, are not done by college students. They're not done by students. They're done by people in their like 30s and 40s. They're done by people who are raising families, but they can't survive on wages that are minimum wage. So most of the time, people have multiple minimum wage jobs, and a lot of people, especially boomers, will be like, well, why aren't you doing something else then? It's like, well, you can't, because you can't sustain your living on that currency, you're basically, you don't have any other options. You don't have a safety net to go to other jobs and stuff like that. And so that's why to me, I always feel the notion of even having part-time work or work that you can work at without being able to pay for your basic necessities is just crazy to me. And in Japan, it's like obvious. Everybody, I mean, you too, every single Japanese person I know, they just love it. They're like, for no reason. No, they have no expectation. They have no thought. They just do, like, even like high school, middle school, there's this notion, they don't even question, they don't even have the whole value of a dollar thing. People just do it. They just like, oh, you gotta do the arubaito because you gotta do the arubaito. And it's like, what?
要するに、例えば大学生がアルバイトする理由としては、遊ぶお金であったり、その家庭がちょっとあんまり、お金がない人だと、家賃払ったり、生活費ね。
Hold on. We're not talking about Japan. Generally speaking, everybody's basically middle class. There's some obviously poor people, and that exists. But I'm just talking about everybody that's out of baito. I'm just saying a lot of people. For example, your whole fukugyo, the whole conversation we had there. I find it very interesting because what I hear when I hear fukugyo is they feel compelled, and this could not be the case, but this is my assumption. They want to do something else to generate money, but they've already kind of put themselves on this track and that they feel like they have to do something else and they have to put whatever they really want to do on the side. That's what I hear. You know what I'm saying?
そう本業で好きなことやってなくて、好きなことやるためには副業しないといけないみたいな感じ?
No. It's more like no. It's like they want their fukugyo to be their hongyo. But they already put all this investment into a whole other section because they felt like they had to. And they're screwed either way at this point. So might as well be able to do what you want on the side if you can't do it full time. And that's kind of feel with Gen Z as well with gig work. Even though gig work, I feel like has a bunch of really big downsides to it in general, whatever, as well. Gig work. That's why I told you the one-off. At the very least, I guess it gives the impression or the general, maybe some sort of idea that you're able to have more free time for yourself, whether or not that's a thing that's realistically happening or not. But yeah, I'm not sure like if you've ever asked anybody of your friends like why they're doing arubaito specifically.
アルバイト、結構私の友達でもすごいのが、私はメッドスクール行ってるから、メッドスクールは結構忙しいけど、週6とかを週6毎日1時間2時間ぐらいやってる友達がいて、なんでだろう、なんでやってるのかって聞いたら、でもその子はその人に教えるのが好きだからやってるみたいな。家庭教師とか塾講師やってるんだけど。
Yeah. I mean, what I'll say is like, to be very clear, there are plenty of, the reason I'm so like confused by the situation, I'm not talking about countries where like you're more impoverished and you're just trying to like, from a just financial perspective and like a resource perspective, you don't have enough resources to survive. America and Japan are some of the wealthiest nations, and not just wealthiest nations currently, ever that's ever existed. Technically, in terms of just pure resources, in terms of how much resources the country has as a whole, there is more than enough money to actually have people like just survive. And a lot of people, even people who technically are perfectly fine and have like a stable, or let's say, even if they're living whatever. I mean, there are a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck in America as well. Regardless of where you are in that, there's kind of like this brainwashing that, oh, no. You don't want to put work, you don't want to put effort into something that could be like your passion or whatever. You should be being a waiter. Like during this, like in when I was a kid, when I was,
なんて言うんだろう、あれだよ。結構日本だと アジアの考えとしてはさ、もうステイボーになることがまあ目標なんだよ。だから結構今のね若い人は公務員ってなんていうの、国のなんかそういう
The government jobs?
まあそうだね、
like
市役所でシティ
Yeah.
ホーとかで働いたり、まあ公務員って絶対にまあ給料は高くないけどなんか会社が倒産したりとかしないからね。からなんていうんだろう、安定して働けるっていう、そういうまあ公務員を望んでる人が多くて、でやっぱりステーブライズな、まあ、サラリーをもらうにはその嫌な仕事でも やる必要があるじゃん。
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. For one, I do find it funny that you're mentioning that because from what I remember doing, like Japan's post office used to be like done publicly, or like a large portion was public, like done by the government, and then it got privatized, and a bunch of people lost their work. I'm not sure you know about that.
なんだっけ、郵政民営化
UPAC or something was what it was
そう
called.
そうそうそう。
Yeah, the only reason I know about that is because in my Hikimori thesis, there's a whole section about UPAC. So that's one funny thing. Like the government also in itself has a risk, but something that I've always considered, or the way I think about it, and one of the reasons that I've never been drawn, and just to be clear, I'm not sure it's obvious, whatever, but I'm not very well off, whatever. But at the same time, like for America standards in general, whatever, like I'm fine. Like, yeah, I'm saying I'm not like,
本当
yeah. Well, in terms of like, what would you call it? Like having your basic needs met. And so like in high school and in elementary school and other stuff like that, or yeah, even in elementary, I think I did do like a paper route one time, but it was just because I just liked hanging out with one of my friends, and he just said to me, I'm like, oh, dude, I'm down to hang out with you more. And now that I think about it, it's so crazy. Yeah, we had like an older woman like drive us around to people's front doors, and then like we didn't actually give the paper, we had to convince them to buy the paper. So there's a bunch of two kids being basically used by this other person to try them to get newspaper subscriptions. And we had to she basically, just because we're cute kids and are just using us to do that. But I didn't really think about it as a way to get money. We barely got any money from that, I think. I just thought it was fun to hang out with my friend. But aside from that, I've never really saw any point to working part-time for the sake of working part-time. Like on my free time, I always did stuff that I was like very like hobbies I had. So like YouTube, I'm not sure if you know, maybe if somebody able finds it, but I did another YouTube channel before I had this channel as well, where I developed a lot of like video editing skills and other stuff like that. I've had a lot of like passion projects and different things and crafts and other stuff that I've done over the summer. But I've never understood the person who's like, I have all this free time, I can develop my skill sets. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a waiter for 8 hours a day or whatever throughout the entire summer.
なんだろう、ここさ、それアメリカンドリームとは関係あるの？なんかその自分がなんだpassionate な。
I just want to do something I like. You know what I'm saying? It's not really it's not an American dream. I'm not thinking.
じゃあそれをなんていうの？続けてまあ成功したいっていうのがなんていうの？それがアメリカ的な考えなのか、それはジョイ個人的ななんていうの考え。
Well, the American dream's a little separate. The American dream is saying you want a 2-car garage. I fucking hate cars, as we all know here. I don't care. I don't want to own a car. Ideally. But it's like 2-car garage, you have a big family, whatever, have a big lawn. Like almost in terms of the practical things, the American dream, I could care less about them. But there's the idea that anybody can be huge or whatever, and you just need to put in work. That's like a big thing in American Dream. And the reason it's fundamentally different from what I'm saying, one, American Dream kind of posits that you do these expected things. Working and pulling yourself up from these bootstraps, this very vague idea of work, is part of the American Dream. That's not actually connected to getting higher up in any sort of hierarchy. That's you working in like I'm just going to call them like borderline slave labor jobs, does not get you into higher positions of money. You just gets you stuck, like I told you, doing menial labor for people for your whole life. Also, this whole notion that you need to have like live above what you can afford with like multiple car garages or whatever stuff, that also just gets you debt trapped. So all stuff like in the traditional American dream just serves people to get them stuck in endless meaningless jobs. My thing is, I don't care about being super rich or whatever. I just want to do what I enjoy. Which
それは何？ Average American の考え方なのか？
I'm saying that Gen Z, I think, is way more that. When I hear 副業 increase in Japan...
この観点からすると You're Gen Z じゃん。
Yeah, from that perspective. I mean, I definitely share some Gen Z things.
じゃあもう今聞くけど、もしyou're passionate about のものが、今はあんまり成功してなかったとする。で、その間ってさ、やっぱり no payment なわけじゃん。そうしたらどうやって生活すればいいの？
I mean, this is like, it depends entirely on the situation. Like, it just, whatever circumstances dictate, you know what I'm saying? If you can't survive, you don't have food, you need to get some sort of income.
でしょ？
But that's what I'm saying. That's where the 副業, that's why I hear 副業 in that way.
だからなんていうの？なんていうの？自分がやりたいことをやるっていうのが日本人で副業で、その副業で生きていけないから本業をやるっていうのが日本の働き方。
No, but I think it's backwards. I think they trap themselves into a 本業 from the beginning when they could have spent their time making their 副業 something they could actually do. That's what I'm saying.
そっか。
And I'm saying, and they had the risk and reward backwards. To me, doing something you hate and wanting to shoot yourself or whatever and getting stuck, like hating your job so much that you want to riot and revolt when you have to work 2 more years, like in France for retirement, that is the most terrifying risk. But anyways, yeah, we're going pretty long. So a lot of thoughts here. Yeah, let us know what you think.
どうやって働きたいのかね、皆さんのご意見をお待ちしております。
Yeah.
はい、
戻りました。
We're back.
今週新しい動画がアップロードされました。
So, what's the video about?
日本のゲームショップについての動画。
Yeah. So, we had a collaboration with
そう
the...
ジェリジェリカフェと、
Yes.
ジェリジェリゲームズとジェリジェリストア。
Yeah.
ジェリジェリ会社、ジェリジェリ会社わからない。
Yeah. But it's a big board game, card game company. And yeah, we could film inside the cafe and the store.
それでなんかそのことに興味ある方、ぜひ動画見てみてください。
はい。On YouTube, if you search lazyfluency,
そう。
and you can find the main channel. So, yeah.
頑張って作ったので、
Yeah.
ぜひ。で、今週、これから動画で、なんか編集だけじゃなくて撮影も頑張るので、ぜひぜひメインチャンネルに登録してください。でも、その動画で、見なかった人は、このセクション聞いた方がいいと思うんだけど、その動画で出なかった他の日本のボードゲームについて話したかった。いろんな他のなんか情報入れたかったんだけど、できなかったから、このセクションでちょっとだけ話したいと思ってた。で、その日本のゲーム、私、多分今で、このゲーム持ってないから、この話できないけど、はというゲームがすごく人気。
はかな。
はというゲーム。
Yeah. So we have this game, which is made by a Japanese company.
そうだと思う。
Yeah. And it's...
名前はそう、はというゲーム。で、どうぞ。
Yeah. So you have this main theme word, and then you have to express the, how do I say, feelings?
そう。そのセリフをいろんな感情で言わなくちゃいけない。例えば、テーマは、その表現とか、セリフは、その、はというゲームのはだったら、そのいろんな選択肢がある。まずはなんか、感情的にはを言う。で、なんか、イカれてるはとか、その泣きそうみたいに。
泣きそうなはとか、when you get dumped by your boyfriend or girlfriend のはとか。
そう、例えば、その、まずの、なんていうか、感情なしのはとか、その泣きそうのはとか、いろんなはをしなくちゃいけなくて、他の人が自分がどのはをやってるのを推測しなくちゃいけない。で、このボードゲーム動画に出なかったんだけど、そのなんか日本語の学習、なんか資料としてすごくいいだと思う。
いいと思う。
そう。
I don't think you guys have this kind of game in America.
いや、ないと思う。見たことない。そのなんか演技というか声優の練習として。
アクティングのね、プラクティス。
めっちゃ楽しいから、 今までなんか日本のボードゲームとかカードゲームをやってなかった人は勧めするそのハというゲーム、日本語あまりわからなくてもできると思う。一応頑張ってそれぞれの説明なんか選択肢を読めば。
So we're gonna put the package in the YouTube video, right? Like how to game, like on the
そうやる。実は持ってるけど持って。
yeah. We forgot to bring right here. The game.
残念。とりあえず他のそのボードゲームに出たゲームがあったんだけど、将棋。その最初のシーンでは将棋とか、サムネもその将棋のポーズも出たんだけど、将棋のやり方は全くわからない。少しだけ分かったんだけど。
super complicated chess.
そう。みんな将棋という日本のチェス。Japanese chess かな。でもルールは似てるけど全然違う。それぞれの普通のチェスだとそのポン、歩兵かなわからない。が他の常盤でしたっけそのボードです。なんていうか言い方忘れてしまったんだけど、そのコマだけがクイーンになれる。その他のなんていうか敵の領域に入ったら。
When the pawn が
invade the very last piece.
Half.
普通のチェスだと。
そうなんです。
その他のなんていうかボードの果てまで行かなくちゃいけない。
だけどね、将棋だと
それぞれのコマはなんか決まったなんか新旧っていうか進化がある。そう。例えばそのパンにクイーンだけじゃなくて何でしたっけ？Like Red Dragon が Blue Dragon で、King General が Silver General とか。
It's worth practicing how to play 将棋 at some point.
で、コマをなくしたら、なくすというか、将棋だとなくすんじゃなくて、なんか捕獲でしたっけ？捕まる。他の人の捕まって。
you can take the opponent's コマで you can use.Yeah.
そうもう一度使えることができる。その自分の戦いなんで、それでなんかすごく複雑で、今までやったことないけどルールとしては面白い。それでこれからもっと頑張らないと。で、今週私がこの動画なんかぜひ見てください。頑張ってきたので、それでもう一度忘れないようにハというゲーム。その前の説明は面白かったと思ってたら、ぜひ。
We're gonna put the link in the comment section?
リンクというか、わからない。とりあえず、ジェリジェリカフェのウェブサイトとか、そのハッというゲームを売ってるなら、そのリンクを載せるかもしれない。じゃあ。
We're back.
We're back with the final section, and if you've made it to the final section, that means you should send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a question language related and or otherwise.
日本人の皆さん、日本語の E メールが全然来ないんですけど、どうしたことでしょうか？
Please send us Japanese emails. But this week, we have a few questions and comments, and the first one is from Shockox, and it goes,What is a friend? My favorite place for my friendships is to get to a place where even long distance and time doesn't diminish it. I have those ones where you talk every couple of months and it's just as strong as ever every time. I have some where we used to talk daily, but now we're extended out to maybe a few conversations a year. But once those are picked up, it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a different person. I treasure those. Congratulations to Aimi on officially student doctoring.
ありがとうございます。
Yeah. So we talked about friends in the last episode, so this was a follow-up. And I generally agree. Although I will say that even friends that I've had for a very long time and communicate less, like there is just a fact in there. Even if you're close and you hold these long relationships, I definitely slightly feel, maybe even personally, the longer it goes that you're communicating with them, even though you can pick it back up, the closeness kind of distances a little bit. Even with some of my closest friends, like it's like it goes in waves. Like if I don't communicate them for only once, 2 times, 3 times a year, and that goes on for a while, then over a long period of time, you slowly become more and more distant. Like they have separate friend groups that they're closer with and stuff like that. So just like everything, I feel like maintaining even long friendships, you still have to put in some work, or it's gonna distance itself naturally. I mean, sometimes whatever.
まあでもさ、
friendships distance.
あれだよね、こうやってめちゃめちゃ久しぶりに会って、なんだろう、気まずくない関係っていうのは本当にフレンドだと思う。わかる？
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a pretty
気使
good
ったり
thing.
するじゃん。ちょっとなんていうの、言葉では表現できないけど、やっぱアンニージネスとかはまあ心の中で感じるじゃん。もしあんまり仲良くない人だったら。
Yeah.
でもそれ沈黙とかだと喋んないとか思うけど、それが本当の友達だったらなんかいるだけでなんか心地いいとかあるから、それが本当のフレンドシップだと思う。
I think, yeah, that's a good definition, I guess, for me, especially for me, because I'm very talkative, and if I notice someone isn't, or I notice something uneasy in the vibe, then I'll definitely fill up that space with words.
そう、私もそう。なんかね。
But if I don't feel the need to talk and it's comfortable, I definitely think that is probably...
そう。でもさ、それが自分がそうなんていうの、気使わなくていいとか、まあ、心地よいと思ってたとしてもさ、その相手の人が同じように思ってるとは限らないからさ。ね、それも難しいよね。
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, so we have like two questions, I think, to follow up on. So yeah, thanks so much for the comment. I know you had a much larger comment, but we just have to respond to what we were able to. And the next comment is from Oddity. Actually, two questions. Also, just a quick note, Oddity also had very similar feelings about shock ox in terms of what defines a friendship. But questions. So, is going to an izakaya a man-only activity?
ここで決めるのね。
Yeah, we'll go through each one. There's a lot of mini questions.
まあ、居酒屋に行くのが、男の人しかやらないことなのかっていう、まあ、質問だけど、いや、別に女の人も行きますと。で、
Well, I guess maybe we should, is it not customary for women to go drinking? Will people not strike up a conversation with you in a bar? I actually do think that, like, remember we had that, it was like words of, popular trending words of 2022? And for fun fact, Tenshoku was on that, just referring to our first section. But another word that was also on that was it boys club? Something boys club? Old boys club?
あったね。
Yeah. And I was referring to bars and other stuff as being a place that's only really intended. I definitely feel like men are the primary audience for any sort of bar or izakaya. But I think when you're saying women go, is it not customary for women to go drinking? I definitely would say it is. But from my impression, it's a forced pressure situation as being a part of a group. So if you're part of a group, whether you work, whatever, the guys who tend to be more assertive, whatever, or they tend to have seniority, they choose where everybody's going out to. And the women, in large, just kind of have to decide whether or not they want to go or not. Like in your case, like you get invited because of it, just because you're in a group. You said it frequently, right? And you just never wanted to go. So I don't know whether that means that it's customary for them to go drinking. It's not customary for them to go drinking the same way that a guy does in America, I think. Where like do you think women on their own volition, separate from hooking up with somebody, or not that they're hooking up, whatever, like as an activity that they would want to do, girl, let's go to the bar. Is that a thing they do? That's
何バーそれとも居酒屋？
izakaya, either one.
お酒が好きな人だったら行くんじゃない？
Yeah, okay. So that's a specific. I'm saying average. You know what I'm saying? Is that?
アベレージだとカフェとかじゃない？アベレージ、まあ例えば。
But yeah, but guys wouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Guys going to a bar by themselves, just the two people, is also a thing. So I think that's the question.
居酒屋。まあ時間にもよるな。夜だったら居酒屋の方が行くんじゃない？で、仕事帰りだったり。で。
Women?
行く人
They wouldn't go to like karaoke instead?
いや。まあ、女同士だったらカフェの方が多いのかな。カフェで。
カフェ。Yeah.
まあ、
What about the second part? So, will people not strike up a conversation with you in a bar?
Nope.
Yeah, I doubt it. Unless you're by yourself, you're going into rural Japan, maybe. You're a foreigner. And you're sitting at a bar beside other people, and then I think there's always sort of that there might be that one guy who gets drunk enough who's like, I want to try out some of my English. I mean everybody knows what I'm talking about, but yeah, there are definitely some. Okay, I'll just say whatever. I think abroad in Japan met Natsuki, who's like one of his close friends, in that situation, unless I'm misremembering, like at a bar. So if you want to meet old Japanese men, then bars are great. But I think probably they'd be more open to talk to you. But I don't think generally speaking, you're setting up a long-lasting friendship.
ないね、
yeah.
ないね。まあ、そういうなんていうの
Bars are just in general. I think that they're also just a shit place to make friends in America either. When is a bar a good place to make friends? Conversely, I maybe it's my personality. I mean, it's definitely my personality, but I've never made a good anything meeting somebody at a bar.
in America で
Just in general.
な
And
んかよく
I don't drink, but my friends go to bars.
よくさ、
yeah.
アメリカのさ、ドラマとか映画でもさ、結構みんなバーに行ってそこで話しかけるっていうシーンはもうよくあるじゃん。
I mean, you mean 話しかける as in they are hitting on women?
あ、
right?
そっかそっか。
Yeah.
友達はないんだ。
To find it? No, don't think
あ、
so.
そう。あ、まあでも
They
あ
get
れ
into
だ。
fights. You get into bar fights. I've
わかった
plenty of friends who've gone to a bar and just gone to a bar fight.
あれだ。その people strike up a conversation でさ、これまあする場合もある。でこのする場合というのはバーの店主とか居酒屋の店主、結構なんていうの、こじんまりとした
The bartender?
あ、そうそうそう、ちっちゃいお店とかだったでカウンターに座ってたらさ、でその自分が話しかけやすそうな人だったら今日一人ですか、仕事帰りですかとか多分聞かれるかもしれないね。
That's almost like being asked. I don't know if that barely constitutes the, like I'm saying we like, oh my gosh.
それも何、会話に入るのかな。
That's like saying, does it count if you like go to a checkout and the person says, are you going to get a plastic bag?
それは違うよ。でもそっからさ、なんかどんな仕事してんですかとかさ、につなが
Or
るじゃ
okay,
ん。
maybe a more realistic one is like getting your hair cut. Does that count as like a conversation?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
だってそっからまた広がるんじゃないの、
Okay.
会話っていうもの
Well,
は。
there's an extended also question from here. So, also she asks, what about anime? Might be wrong, but I have the impression that friendship, a theme in many anime. There's a long list of anime. Steins Gate, Girls Last Tour, Sailor Moon, Gintama, and my beloved Cowboy Bebop, Toradora, Samurai Champloo. Everyone is buddy-buddy and all up in each other's business. Is this not a reflective of something in society or socially? You know what? This is something I wonder all the time. And I've talked about anime as well. I am a huge fan of anime. I'm a huge fan of a lot of Japanese pop culture. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of other stuff in Japan. A lot of things I'm really big fan of. A lot of things I'm not a big fan of. Something that I've not really gotten the impression from real life Japanese people I've met is multiple characteristics. A extroversion paired with, I'd say, like creativity, generally speaking, and like outgoingness, not an extroversion, but in terms of independence, in terms of like entrepreneurial spirit, something like that. At the same time, I love anime. I think the people making these behind, like the manga writers, whatever, I would love to meet one of these people. I've never met them in my life, but apparently they're plenty, or not plenty, they're there because they make all these works. And so what I will say is, the people who are writing these things in the first place, I feel like are very specific types of people. And you know what I'm saying? Who are actually writing, and especially the ones that actually get published, given all the ones that are getting published. And then the ones who get an anime adaptation after that is even a smaller set of people with their own values or whatever. I'm not saying that there aren't representations or whatever of real society in them, but I will say is the whole buddy nature, I just don't think, to me, almost a lot of these teams like almost a Western style of friendship. Like as we discussed earlier, I think a lot of friendships are based purely on a group or club that you entered, which is very common in anime. So in that sense, that's true, but I don't think the buddiness is like...
バディバディネスがどういう感じなの？
I mean, there's a lot of versions. I mean, a lot of these, when I'm thinking of the examples that she gave, are just close-knit friend groups that they go out. I mean, a lot of them are similar. Like as we established, Japan, very group. If you're in a group, like, or your school group, whatever group, sport, you'll go out and do a bar, whatever. But what I will say is I definitely think there's a stronger degree of separation between even the people hanging out together. Like, they're not as close as they're portrayed in anime. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there's plenty of people who, even the person who's their closest friend, I don't think that closest friend can get access to what is inside the other friend's head. Like, let's say like 40% of what's in there. You know what I'm saying? Whereas in anime, it's like, I'll die for you. And I don't think that's the case, especially with a lot of these, like, Cowboy Bebop, like Samurai Champloo.
どういうアニメかもわかんないけど。
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give you an explanation of all these. All these are good shows, by the way, so I recommend.
結構あれじゃない？学園もののさ、アニメとかだと結構そういうのは結構リレートしてる気がしなくもないけどね。
I mean, maybe. I mean, I will say that there was a whole... So one of my Japanese professors professors, one of his fields of research is on actual, like, bromance, literally, like, Japanese bromance in, like, 1980s, 1990s, early 2000 anime. And he finds it very interesting, which, as do I, as well. And something he talks about is there's a very... I don't know if this comes with friendship, whatever. America has it too with their big guns, whatever. There's a very interesting borderline of, what would I call it? Homoeroticism with a lot of like these anime relationships, especially in the 1980s and 1990s, where like think like JoJo, like old. You don't know much about JoJo's, but like everything is guys with big muscles, like kind of like getting all over each other. Like there's constant fighting. There's very big like exaggerated hugging. People are crying over their guy friends dying. And it's very like straight, but also gay at the same time. And so I don't know. I don't feel that at all in Japan society. In America, I do. In Japan, I've never seen the hyper bro. I haven't seen that.
スポーツ系だとそれあるんじゃね。
Probably, yeah.
けどまあね、普通の会社員でそれはないと思うよ。
But even when I went to I went to like a high school volleyball thing in Japan, and nobody was. There was no like. It wasn't like haiku and everybody's yelling going Yasha! It was just like me, because I'm, for many reasons, like, just a quick aside, like when I was in basketball, if you ever weren't saying actively what you're doing, communicating, they'd have you running. So when I was in Japan, I was constantly communicating, and everybody else was dead silent. Like they were going hardcore, but I'm saying I didn't feel like the anime.
ないね。みんながあれだけ、あれアニメだとさ、それぞれキャラが濃いじゃん。
Yeah.
だけど、なんていうの？みんながみんなキャラ濃いわけじゃないからね、in real life だと。
Yeah. Maybe what I'll say is, I think there might be some cross-cultural influencing in Japanese anime as a result of the influence of America. And maybe some of those values as well. But at the same time, I will say that Japan is definitely, there's a lot of Japan in there. But I don't know how much, at least with the degree of buddy-buddiness that is present in those, I've never personally experienced from a Japanese person. Like I said, people don't like touching each other. Physical intimacy is not really a thing between guys or couples.
もうね、日本人がハグしてたらびっくりしちゃうよ、日本人の男同士が。
Yeah, no, like I was saying, like one of the early episodes of our podcast is called like My Parents Don't Hug Me. Parents don't hug each other. But like in all these, especially Golden Kamuy, I'm not sure if you don't know. Oh, I mentioned Golden Kamuy before. Yeah, no, like the whole thing is really buff, big dudes. Like a lot of time they're naked. Good show, by the way. And a bunch of it is like humor relating to their genitals or their muscles, and they're hugging each other. There's just whole scenes of them like in the onsen together, naked, like tackling each other, and you're like, is this gay porn or is that? No, it's really funny, but yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, so hopefully we answered your questions. That bell means we've reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and or just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com and we might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Yummy.
Signing off. Ja ne.
Bye-bye.